After I discovered my husband's affair and decided to finally end the marriage, the other woman's husband found me, admitted he knew everything, handed me $100,000 like it was nothing, and calmly asked me to stay married for 3 more months. But before I begin, please like and subscribe to the channel. And we'd love to hear which part of the world are you joining us from. Let us know. Now let's dive into today's story. The kitchen light flickered twice before settling into a steady hum. Nadine Porter stood at the sink, hands submerged in water that had gone from scalding to lukewarm, scrubbing at a casserole dish that didn't need scrubbing anymore. Through the window above the faucet, she could see the neighbor's porch light come on, the Hendersons, always punctual with their evening routine. 17 years. That's how long she'd been washing dishes in this kitchen, in this split-level house 3 blocks from Hawthorne Ridge High School, in this town where everyone knew your maiden name and remembered which pew your family sat in on Sundays. Behind her, Elliot's chair scraped against the tile. He didn't say goodnight. The bedroom door closed with a soft click that somehow felt louder than a slam. Nadine dried her hands on a towel that still smelled like fabric softener from yesterday's laundry. The house settled into its familiar creaks, the furnace kicking on, the refrigerator humming, the old pipes groaning through the walls. This was the sound of a marriage dying quietly. She'd known for months, really. Not the specifics, not the name or the face or the phone number that would eventually confirm everything. But she'd known in the way you know a storm is coming before the first raindrop falls. Elliot had started arriving home later, always with explanations that made sense individually but formed a pattern when you stepped back far enough to see it. Client meetings, budget reviews, traffic on Route 36. He'd stopped asking about her day, stopped noticing when she changed her hair or wore the blue sweater he used to say made her eyes brighter, stopped reaching for her hand during the evening news. The absence of touch speaks louder than arguments ever could. Briggs appeared in the doorway, all 16 years and 6 feet of him, shoulders filling the frame the way his father's used to. "Mom, you okay?" Nadine turned, smile automatic. "Fine, honey. Just finishing up." He studied her with those dark eyes that missed nothing. "Dad didn't eat. He said he had a late lunch." "He's been having a lot of late lunches." Nadine folded the towel, placed it on the counter with careful precision. "Did you finish your calculus homework?" "Don't do that." "Do what?" "Change the subject when something's wrong." She met her son's gaze and saw Elliot's stubborn jaw, her own unwillingness to look away from hard truths. Briggs had inherited the worst and best of both of them. "Nothing's wrong that you need to worry about," she said, voice steady. "Focus on your grades. College applications are coming." He lingered another moment, then nodded and retreated upstairs. His bedroom door closed, not angry, just resigned. Nadine waited until his footsteps faded before allowing her shoulders to drop. She leaned against the counter, staring at the calendar magnet to the refrigerator. Marlowe had drawn hearts around next Tuesday, her 12th birthday. Elliot had promised to take her shopping for new soccer cleats. He'd probably forget. The thought made something twist in Nadine's chest. Not for herself, but for their daughter, who still believed her father's promises meant something. She walked through the house, turning off lights, checking locks. The living room still smelled faintly of the cinnamon candles she'd burned over the weekend. Family photos lined the mantel, vacations to Brown County, Christmas mornings, Briggs's football games, Marlowe's dance recitals. In every picture they looked happy. The camera captured smiles, but not the spaces between them. Upstairs, she paused outside Marlowe's door. Her daughter's voice drifted through, talking to her best friend about some drama at school. Voice bright with the kind of uncomplicated joy that wouldn't last much longer. 12 was the edge of something, the last year before everything got harder. Nadine continued to the bedroom she still technically shared with her husband. Elliot was already in bed, lamp off, back turned toward the wall. The shape of him under the comforter looked familiar and foreign at once. She changed into sleep clothes in the bathroom, took her time with her skincare routine. When she emerged, nothing had changed. Elliot's breathing had evened out, or he was pretending it had. Nadine slid under the covers on her side, leaving the canyon of space between them that had grown wider each month. She stared at the ceiling, counting the minutes until sleep came, wondering when exactly she'd stopped fighting for this marriage and started simply enduring it. The answer came 3 days later, on a Tuesday morning that began like any other. She was making coffee when her phone buzzed with a notification from their wireless carrier, a routine alert about their family plan usage. Nadine almost dismissed it, but something made her open the full message. 2 lines were listed under Elliot's name. Their family had 4 phones total. Hers, his Briggs's Marlowe's. That was it. The account shouldn't show a 5th line. Nadine set down her coffee cup and opened their carrier's website on her laptop. Logged into the account using credentials they'd shared for years. Found the billing details. There it was. A 2nd line added to Elliot's profile 8 months ago. A number she didn't recognize. The usage history showed hundreds of texts, calls that lasted hours, most of them late at night, after he'd said goodnight to the family and closed the bedroom door. She clicked through another month, and another. The pattern never changed. Sometimes the calls went past midnight into 1 and 2 in the morning, while Elliot lay beside her pretending to sleep. Nadine's hands didn't shake. Her breathing stayed even. She'd expected this, she realized, had been braced for it so long that the confirmation felt almost like relief. She screenshotted everything, forwarded the data to her personal email, cleared her browser history out of habit more than strategy. The coffee had gone cold. She poured it out and made a fresh cup, movements mechanical, thoughts already racing ahead to what came next. Confrontation would achieve nothing. Elliot would deny it or minimize it or blame her somehow for not being enough. That's what people did when they got caught. They rewrote history to make themselves the victim. But Nadine didn't need his confession. She needed information. She picked up her phone and called the number from the mystery line. It rang 4 times. A woman answered, voice cautious. "Hello." "Hi," Nadine said, keeping her tone neutral. "I'm calling about the phone line connected to my husband's account. I think there might be some confusion about the billing." Silence on the other end. "Then who is this?" "Nadine Porter, Elliot's wife." The woman hung up. Nadine set down her phone and smiled, a small, cold thing that didn't reach her eyes. Now she had a voice to match the number. Female, mid-30s probably, nervous enough to hang up immediately. Someone who knew exactly who Nadine was and exactly what she'd done. She looked up the number using a reverse search directory. It took 3 different websites before she found a name, Tessa Rowley. Another search revealed an address in Hawthorne Ridge, less than 2 miles away. Facebook profile set to private, but showing a profile picture. Blonde, pretty in a conventional way, standing next to 2 children in soccer uniforms. Married. A family, just like Nadine. She closed the laptop and finished her coffee, staring out the kitchen window at the morning light filtering through the trees in the backyard. A cardinal landed on the fence post, bright red against the gray wood. When Elliot came downstairs 20 minutes later, dressed for work and checking his phone, Nadine was loading the dishwasher. "Morning," he said, not looking up. "Morning." He poured coffee into his travel mug, grabbed his keys from the hook by the door. "I'll be late tonight. Budget meeting." "Sure," Nadine said. "What time?" 9, maybe 10. She nodded, wiping down the counter. "Drive safe." He paused at the door, glanced back. For a second, something flickered in his expression. Guilt, maybe, or the awareness that she'd stopped asking questions. Then he was gone, and Nadine was alone with the knowledge that would change everything. She waited until evening, until both kids were home and dinner was on the table. Baked chicken, roasted vegetables, rolls from the bakery Marlowe liked. A normal Tuesday meal for a family that had stopped being normal months ago. Elliot came home at 6:30, earlier than he'd said, which meant the late meeting had been a lie from the start. They ate in near silence. Marlowe chattered about soccer practice. Briggs mentioned a chemistry test. Elliot made appropriate responses, asked appropriate questions, played the role of present father with practiced ease. Nadine watched him across the table and wondered how she'd never noticed how good he was at pretending. After dinner, after the kids retreated to their homework and their screens, Nadine found Elliot in the garage. He was organizing tools on his workbench, another avoidance technique, busy work to fill the space where conversation used to be. "I know about the second phone line," she said, his hands stilled on a wrench. He didn't turn around. "I know about Tessa Rowley. I know you've been calling her every night for 8 months. I know this has been going on while you've been sleeping in our bed and eating at our table and lying to our children." Elliot set down the wrench slowly. When he finally turned to face her, his expression was carefully blank. "It's not what you think. Don't insult me. Nadine, is it over?" He opened his mouth, closed it, looked at his hands instead of her face. No, the honesty surprised her. She'd expected more lies, more deflection. Maybe he was tired too. "Are you in love with her?" "I don't know." "That's not an answer." "It's the only answer I have." Nadine nodded slowly, absorbing this. Around them, the garage smelled like motor oil and sawdust and the ghost of promises that had rotted from the inside out. Do her husband and children know? Elliot's jaw tightened. That's not relevant. It is to me. Why? What does it matter? Because I want to know if you're just a liar or if you're also a coward. He flinched. That's not fair. Fair. Nadine laughed, a harsh, bitter sound she barely recognized as her own. You've been cheating on me for 8 months, probably longer, and you're worried about fair. It just happened, okay? We didn't plan it. Things with us have been bad for a while. Don't you dare blame this on me. I'm not. I'm just saying we haven't been happy. So your solution was to find happiness with someone else while pretending everything was fine, while letting your children believe their family was intact. Elliot said nothing. His silence was answer enough. Nadine turned to leave, then stopped at the door. I'm sleeping in the guest room, and you're going to tell Briggs why you missed his last 3 football games. You're going to look him in the eye and explain where you've actually been. Nadine, I'm done covering for you, Elliot. Whatever happens next, you're going to face it alone. She walked back into the house, leaving him standing in the garage with his half-organized tools and his half-formed excuses. That night, curled on the guest room bed with a pillow that smelled like detergent instead of her husband's cologne, Nadine finally let herself cry. Not for the marriage, that had been dead for months, maybe years. She cried for the life she'd built, for the children who were about to learn their father was human in the worst possible way, for the future she'd have to rebuild from scratch. But when the tears dried and the house fell silent, something else settled into their place. Clarity, purpose, and the cold, hard knowledge that she would survive this, not because of Elliot, but in spite of him. A week passed. The house developed new rhythms, new patterns of avoidance. Elliot moved into the guest room without being asked. Briggs stopped speaking to his father beyond necessary pleasantries. Marlowe sensed the tension, but hadn't yet connected the pieces. Still young enough to believe adults had mysterious problems that would solve themselves. Nadine went through the motions. Work, school pickups, grocery shopping, laundry. The infrastructure of daily life that continued regardless of personal catastrophe. She was loading groceries into the trunk on a Thursday afternoon when a man approached her in the parking lot. Nadine Porter. She turned, hand instinctively tightening on her keys. The man was tall, mid-40s, with the kind of tired face that suggested too many sleepless nights. His clothes were neat but worn, button-down shirt with sleeves rolled to the elbows, jeans that had seen better days. Who's asking? Grant Rowley. He kept his distance, hands visible, non-threatening. Could we talk? Just 5 minutes. Nadine's heart kicked against her ribs, but her voice stayed level. How did you find me? Small town. Your car has a Hawthorne Ridge PDA sticker. He gestured vaguely at her bumper. I've been waiting here for an hour. She studied him, this stranger who shared her circumstances. His eyes were bloodshot but steady. No anger in his posture, just exhausted resignation. My porch, she said finally. Not inside. He nodded and followed her home in a weathered Honda that had seen too many winters. Nadine's hand stayed steady on the wheel, but her mind raced through possibilities. What did he want? Was he here to threaten her, warn her off, beg her to divorce Elliot so Tessa could have him? Grant Rowley didn't look like a man who came to beg. She pulled into her driveway, grabbed one bag of groceries, leaving the rest as an excuse to end the conversation quickly if needed. Grant parked on the street and walked up the path with his hands in his pockets, shoulders hunched against the October wind. They stood on the porch, the autumn air sharp with the smell of dying leaves. I know everything, Grant said without preamble. I've known for months. Nadine set down the grocery bag. Then why are you here? He reached into his jacket and pulled out an envelope. Plain, white, unsealed. Held it out to her. She didn't take it. What is that? $100,000. Checks already written. The number hung in the air between them, incomprehensible. Nadine stared at the envelope, then at Grant. You're joking. I wish I was. Why would you? I need you to stay married for 3 months. The words landed like stones in still water, ripples spreading outward in implications Nadine couldn't immediately follow. Explain, she said. Grant looked past her at the door, making sure they were alone. Your husband and my wife opened a business together 6 months ago. Photography studio downtown. They used both families' homes as collateral on the loans. $50,000 from my bank, $50,000 from yours. Different institutions, same guarantors. Nadine's stomach dropped. Elliot doesn't have a business. He does now. Check your financial records. The paperwork's there, buried in the monthly statements. Why wouldn't I have? She stopped. Of course. Elliot handled their finances. Always had. She trusted him with accounts and passwords and signatures on documents she never read closely enough. If either of us files for divorce in the next 90 days, Grant continued, voice flat with practice, the banks trigger their early repayment clauses. Both loans default simultaneously. Both families lose their homes. My kids are 8 and 10. Yours are 12 and 16. None of them deserve to be homeless because our spouses decided to light their lives on fire. Nadine leaned against the porch railing, processing. 3 months. That's the grace period in the loan agreements. After that, the businesses are separate legal entities. We can dissolve the marriages without triggering the financial collapse. You researched this. I'm a tax attorney. It's what I do. She looked at him, really looked. Saw the exhaustion carved into every line of his face, the wedding ring he still wore, the defeated slope of his shoulders. You're not trying to save your marriage, she said. No, you're protecting your children. Yes. The envelope still hung between them, waiting. Nadine took it, felt the weight of the check inside. Why the money? Because you'll need a good lawyer when this is over. Because I've got the funds, and you probably don't, not liquid anyway. Because he stopped jaw working. Because this isn't your fault, and you shouldn't have to pay for it. It's not your fault, either. Doesn't matter. Someone has to fix it. Nadine opened the envelope, saw the check. $100,000, drawn on a law firm account, made out to her name. She could deposit it tomorrow, secure it before Elliot even knew it existed. What do you get out of this? She asked. 3 months to prepare, to gather documentation, Protect my assets, make sure Tessa can't touch my kids' college funds or my parents' estate. Grant's voice went colder. And when the time comes, I'm taking full custody. She abandoned our children emotionally long before she left them physically. Nadine folded the envelope, tucked it into her jacket pocket. I want it in writing. Contract, terms, everything. Already done. He pulled out his phone, thumbed to an email. I'll send it to you tonight. Read it. Have your own attorney review it. Sign only if you agree. You're very thorough. I've had practice being disappointed. They stood in silence for a moment, two strangers bound by betrayal, watching the afternoon shadows stretch across the lawn. They're still seeing each other, Nadine said. It wasn't a question. Every Tuesday and Thursday. My wife says she has book club. Grant's laugh was bleak. I checked. There's no book club. Elliot says budget meetings. We should introduce them. Let them compare notes on how creative they've gotten. The bitter humor hung between them, dark and shared. Nadine felt something shift in her chest. Not alliance exactly, but understanding. Grant Rowley wasn't her friend, but he was the only person in Hawthorne Ridge who knew exactly what she was facing. I'll hold up my end, she said. 3 months. But after that, we both walk away. You with your kids and your dignity. Me with mine. He turned to leave, then paused at the porch steps. For what it's worth. I'm sorry. My wife did this to you too. Nadine nodded, throat tight. I'm sorry yours did it to you. Grant Rowley walked back to his car, engine turning over with a rough cough, taillights disappearing around the corner. Nadine picked up the grocery bag and went inside. The house was quiet. Briggs at football practice, Marlowe at a friend's. Elliot still at work, or wherever he actually went during his fake late meetings. She sat at the kitchen table and opened the envelope again, staring at the check that represented leverage and security and the cold mathematics of survival. 3 months. She could do 3 months. Could smile for the neighbors and sleep in the guest room and let Elliot believe he'd gotten away with something. And when the time came, she'd burn his whole world down with the precision of someone who'd studied exactly where to aim. The Halloween decorations went up around the neighborhood, plastic skeletons and cotton cobwebs and carved pumpkins that rotted slowly on front steps. Nadine put out their usual display, the one Marlowe helped her arrange every year, while the October wind carried the smell of wood smoke and coming winter. Inside the house, the performance continued. She cooked dinner, did laundry, asked Elliot neutral questions about his day and accepted vague answers. Let him believe the envelope from Grant Rowley had never existed, that the check now secured in her personal account, one Elliot didn't know about, was just another secret in a marriage built on omissions. But Briggs noticed. Her son always noticed. You're different, he said one evening, catching her in the hallway between kitchen and living room. Different how? Calmer, like you've made up your mind about something. Nadine touched his cheek, this boy who'd grown into a young man while she wasn't paying attention. I'm okay, sweetheart. I promise. Are you and Dad getting divorced? The question hung in the hallway, lit by the lamp Nadine's mother had given them as a wedding gift 17 years ago. Not right now, she said carefully. But honey, things aren't good between us. You know that. Is he having an affair? The word landed with surprising weight. Nadine had expected eventually someone would ask it directly, but hearing it from her teenage son's mouth made it real in a way the phone records hadn't. Yes. Briggs's face went carefully blank, the same mask Elliot wore when he didn't want to show emotion. Does Marlowe know? Not yet. Are you going to tell her? When the time's right. He nodded, processing. What do you need me to do? The offer made Nadine's chest ache. Just be a kid. Worry about your grades and your games and that girl you like in calculus. I don't like. Briggs. A faint smile ghosted across his face. Okay, fine. But Mom? I'm not a kid anymore, and if you need me, I'm here. She hugged him, this boy man who smelled like cheap cologne and grass stains, and let herself believe for a moment that everything would be okay. The performance held for 2 weeks before it started cracking. Tessa rarely showed up at the high school football game on a Friday night in early November. Nadine saw her immediately. Blonde hair styled in loose waves, expensive jacket despite the cold, standing too close to the visiting team's bleachers, scanning the crowd with predatory focus. She was looking for Elliot. Nadine sat in her usual spot, 3 rows up from the 50-yard line, Marlo beside her wrapped in blankets. On the field, Briggs's team was up by 10 in the third quarter. Her son played defensive end, all controlled aggression and strategic precision. Tessa found Elliot at the concession stand. Nadine watched them through the crowd. The way Tessa touched his arm, the way Elliot's body language shifted toward her before he caught himself and stepped back. The conversation lasted maybe 2 minutes. Elliot shook his head at something, gestured vaguely toward the bleachers where his family sat. Tessa's expression tightened, but she left, disappearing into the parking lot with the posture of someone who'd been dismissed. Elliot returned with hot chocolate and nachos, handed them to Marlo with a father's automatic smile, sat down on Nadine's other side without meeting her eyes. "Friend of yours?" Nadine asked quietly. "Client's wife." She had questions about a project. The lie sat between them, familiar as the national anthem playing before each game. At a high school football game? Small town. You run into people everywhere. Marlo was absorbed in the game, cheering as Briggs sacked the quarterback. She didn't notice the tension crackling like static electricity between her parents. Nadine leaned close to Elliot, voice low. "Tell her to stay away from our children's events. I don't control." "You're sleeping with her. You absolutely control where she shows up." Nadine's tone never rose above conversational, but her words had edges. "This town talks, Elliot. Parents notice when strange women start appearing at games where they don't belong. If Briggs or Marlo find out because someone else tells them, I will make sure you regret it." Elliot's jaw clenched. "You're threatening me?" "I'm protecting our children. Something you've forgotten how to do." The game continued. The crowd roared. Hawthorne Ridge won by 14 points. Briggs found them in the parking lot afterward, sweaty and grinning, high on victory and adrenaline. Marlo hung on his arm, chattering about the best plays. They looked like a normal family from a distance, in the dark if you didn't look too close. Nadine drove home and waited 3 days before making her move. Monday morning, she called in sick to work, something she almost never did. Waited until Elliot left for his office and the kids caught their buses. Then she got in her car and drove to the address she'd memorized weeks ago. The Raleigh house was similar to hers, split-level, modest, well-maintained. Tessa's Honda sat in the driveway. Lights were on in the kitchen. Nadine parked across the street and called Grant. He answered on the second ring. "Everything okay? Your wife came to my son's football game Friday night. Approached my husband in public." Silence. "Then I'll handle it. I'm outside your house right now." "Nadine." "I'm not going in. I'm not confronting her. But I need you to understand that if she keeps showing up at my family's events, our agreement becomes irrelevant. I will file for separation immediately and accept the financial consequences. Give me 2 hours. You have 1. She hung up and waited. Watched the house with the patience of someone who'd spent months enduring things that would have broken other people. 40 minutes later, Grant's Honda pulled into the driveway. He got out, went inside without knocking. Through the kitchen window, Nadine could see shapes moving, 2 figures in what looked like an intense conversation. Grant emerged 12 minutes after entering, walked to Nadine's car and tapped on the passenger window. She unlocked the door. He slid in, bringing the smell of cold air and barely controlled fury. "She'll stop," he said. "How do you know?" "Because I told her if she approaches Elliot or anyone in your family again, I'm filing for divorce tomorrow, and I'll make sure every business loan we're tied to defaults. She can explain to her children why they're homeless." Nadine studied his profile. "You'd really do that?" "To protect my kids from this getting worse?" "Absolutely." Grant turned to face her. "Look, I'm holding up this facade because the alternative destroys 4 children who didn't ask for any of this. But I'm not sacrificing my dignity or yours to keep Tessa comfortable. She wants to blow everything up? Fine. She can deal with the fallout. She won't stop seeing Elliot. No, but she'll be more discreet about it. That's the best we're going to get." Nadine nodded slowly. It wasn't enough, but it was something. Grant opened the door to leave, then paused. "For what it's worth, you're handling this better than I am. You don't know what I'm like when I'm alone. Neither does your husband, and that's going to be his biggest mistake." He left. Nadine waited another 10 minutes, watching the house where her husband's mistress lived with her betrayed husband and oblivious children, where another family was quietly falling apart in the same town, on the same timeline, for the same stupid reasons. Then she drove home, made lunch, did laundry, picked up Marlowe from school, and continued the performance of being fine. But something had shifted. Tessa now knew Nadine wasn't passive. Elliot sensed the change too, became more cautious, more apologetic in small, meaningless ways, like a man who realizes too late that he's miscalculated his opponent. Nadine met with the attorney Grant had recommended, a woman named Patricia Vance, who specialized in divorce law and complex financial untangling. Brought the loan documents she'd found, the phone records, the check from Grant, everything. Patricia spread the papers across her desk, reading with the focused intensity of someone who'd seen every variation of human betrayal. "This is a mess," she said finally. "Can you fix it?" "In 3 months?" "Yes. Right now. Not without destroying your financial security." "What do I need to do?" Patricia leaned back in her chair, stylus tapping against her tablet. "Keep doing exactly what you're doing. Stay married, stay civil, document everything. When the grace period ends, we file for legal separation with asset freezes. Your husband won't see it coming." "He's not stupid." "No, but he's arrogant. Men like him always think they're smarter than their wives. That's how we win." Nadine left the office with a plan, a timeline, and the cold satisfaction of knowing she wasn't helpless. The weeks crept by. Thanksgiving came and went. Dinner at Elliot's parents' house, where his mother kept glancing between them with worried eyes but said nothing. Marlowe's birthday passed with a party and presents, and her father showing up 90 minutes late. "Traffic," Elliot said, handing his daughter a wrapped gift he'd clearly picked up at the last minute from a convenience store. Marlowe hugged him anyway because she was 12 and still believed her father's presence mattered more than his excuses. Briggs watched from across the room, face unreadable, hand shoved in his pockets. Later that night, Nadine found him on the back porch, staring at nothing. "You okay?" she asked, sitting beside him. "He doesn't even care enough to lie convincingly anymore." "I know. Why are you still letting him stay here?" Nadine looked at her son, this young man who understood more than she'd wanted him to. "Because sometimes you have to let people hang themselves with their own rope. And I want to make sure when your father falls, he falls alone." Briggs turned to her, eyes sharp with his father's intelligence, but warmer, kinder. "You're planning something." "I'm protecting us. There's a difference." "Mom." "Yeah, honey. Whatever you're doing, I'm on your side." She squeezed his hand, and they sat together in the November cold, watching their breath mist in the porch light, while inside the house Elliot's lies continued to unravel thread by thread. December arrived with early snow and the kind of cold that made the old house groan. Christmas decorations appeared on neighbors' lawns, inflatable snowmen, and strings of colored lights, fighting back the winter dark. Nadine didn't decorate. Told the kids they'd do it together over the weekend. Kept postponing. Let the house stay bare while everyone else's blazed with forced cheer. The 3-month mark approached. 79 days since Grant Rowley had handed her that envelope. 79 days of performance and pretense and careful documentation of every expense, every late night, every lie that Elliot thought she believed. Patricia Vance called on a Wednesday morning. The grace period ends December 23rd. We should file on the 21st. Gives you the weekend before Christmas. Creates distance from the holiday itself. The kids. We'll handle it better if you're not pretending through Christmas dinner. Trust me. Nadine agreed and hung up, staring at the calendar on her phone. 2 weeks. She had 2 weeks to prepare her children for the bomb about to detonate in the center of their lives. She told Briggs first. Found him in his room after school. Hunched over calculus homework with headphones on. Tapped his shoulder until he looked up. We need to talk. His face went serious immediately. Is someone sick? No, but your dad and I are separating. Officially. Papers get filed December 21st. Briggs pulled off his headphones, setting them down with careful precision. Okay. That's it? Okay. Mom, I've been expecting this since October. Honestly, I've been waiting for you to stop pretending. The bluntness shouldn't have surprised her. Briggs had always been direct, even as a child. No patience for evasion or emotional manipulation. How do you think Marlo will handle it? Nadine asked. Better than you think. She knows something's wrong. She just doesn't know it yet. I need to tell her before the papers get filed. Want me there? The offer touched something deep in Nadine's chest. No, but thank you. This should come from me. That evening, after dinner, but before homework consumed everyone's attention, Nadine asked Marlo to sit with her on the couch. Briggs disappeared upstairs without being asked. Elliot was already gone. Another late meeting, another transparent excuse. Am I in trouble? Marlo asked, tucking her legs underneath her. No, baby, but we need to talk about Dad and me. Her daughter's face shifted. That particular expression children get when they know something bad is coming, but can't quite brace for it yet. You're getting divorced. Separated first. But yes, probably divorced eventually. Because Dad's been lying. Nadine paused. What do you know about that? I'm not stupid, Mom. He's been different for months. Distant. And you stopped smiling at him. Marlo picked at the edge of a throw pillow. Is there someone else? The question hung between them. Too mature for a 12-year-old, but they're nonetheless. Yes, Nadine said, because lying would only make it worse. Your dad's been seeing someone else. I found out in October. Why didn't you divorce him then? Because sometimes adult decisions are complicated. There were financial reasons we needed to wait. That's a bullshit reason. Marlo, it is. You stayed because you were protecting us, not because of money. I know you, Mom. You'd live in a cardboard box if it meant Briggs, and I were okay. Nadine pulled her daughter close, felt the tension in Marlo's thin shoulders. I love you, both of you, more than anything, and I'm going to make sure we're okay no matter what happens. What about Dad? What about him? Do you still love him? The question deserved honesty. I love the man I married 17 years ago, but that man doesn't exist anymore. I don't know who your father is now. Marlo nodded against Nadine's shoulder, processing in the way only children who've grown up too fast can. Will he still come to my games? If he wants a relationship with you and your brother, he'll have to earn it. I'm not going to force you to spend time with him. Good, because I'm pretty angry at him right now. They sat together as the house settled into evening, mother and daughter, holding the pieces of a fractured family and trying to figure out how they'd fit back together in some new configuration. 2 days later, Nadine's phone rang. Grant Rowley's name lit up the screen. She answered immediately. "What's wrong?" "Nothing's wrong. I'm filing on the 21st too. Wanted to coordinate so the banks get both notices simultaneously." Patricia suggested the same date. Good lawyers think alike. Grant paused. "How are you holding up?" "I'll make it." "Your kids?" "They're tougher than I gave them credit for." "Mine too. My daughter asked me yesterday why we were still pretending everything was fine. I didn't have a good answer." Nadine leaned against the kitchen counter, phone pressed to her ear, listening to this man she barely knew but understood completely. 2 more weeks. 2 more weeks, he agreed. Then we burn it all down." They hung up. Nadine stood in her kitchen in her house, surrounded by 17 years of accumulated life. Family photos and Marlowe's soccer trophies and Briggs's football jerseys framed on the wall, and felt nothing but cold determination. The universe had a way of offering opportunities to people who paid attention. Elliot had made his choices. Tessa had made hers. They'd gambled with other people's lives, and now the bill was coming due. Nadine just had to make sure she was holding all the cards when it did. The next week passed in a blur of final preparations. Patricia filed the paperwork early, December 19th, 2 days ahead of schedule. Strategic timing meant Elliot would get served at work, publicly without warning. Grant filed the same day. Both women received copies of the proceedings simultaneously. Both marriages officially suspended pending final dissolution. Both sets of assets frozen pending court review. Nadine was at the grocery store when her phone buzzed with confirmation from Patricia. She stood in the cereal aisle, reading the text, and allowed herself the smallest smile. It was done. Elliot called an hour later, voice shaking with rage. "What the hell did you do?" "I protected our children and myself. What you should have been doing all along. You can't just freeze our accounts." "I can. I did. You'll receive full details from your attorney when you hire one." Nadine kept her voice level, unconcerned. "Everything you've done in the past 8 months is documented. Every lie, every dollar you spent without my knowledge, every night you pretended to be working late. It's all there, Elliot, time-stamped and cross-referenced." "You've been planning this." "Of course I have. Did you think I'd just roll over?" "Nadine, please, we can work this out." "No, we can't. You made your choice. Now live with it." She hung up and continued shopping, dropping items into her cart with mechanical efficiency. Around her, other shoppers browsed the aisles, oblivious to the fact that someone's marriage had just officially ended somewhere between the pasta and the canned vegetables. That evening, Nadine cooked dinner for her children in a house that felt lighter somehow, less suffocating. Briggs helped set the table. Marlowe made lemonade. They ate together, the 3 of them, filling the silence where Elliot's presence used to be with conversation that felt real for the first time in months. "Is Dad coming back?" Marlowe asked, pushing rice around her plate. "Not to live here, no." "Good." Briggs caught Nadine's eye across the table, and something unspoken passed between them. Relief, acknowledgement, the beginning of whatever came next. The following morning, Elliot's work called Nadine. His supervisor, a woman named Rachel Chin, who Nadine had met at company picnics, spoke carefully. "I'm calling because Elliot listed you as his emergency contact. There's been a situation." Nadine's stomach tightened. "What kind of situation?" "The bank serving your separation papers also triggered an internal investigation. There were discrepancies in some of his project accounts, misreported hours, unauthorized expenses." Rachel paused. "We're placing him on administrative leave pending review." "How long is the leave?" "Indefinitely. If the investigation confirms wrongdoing, he'll be terminated." Nadine thanked her and hung up, mind racing through implications. Elliot hadn't just lied to her. He'd been lying to his employer too. The affair and the financial schemes were all part of the same pattern, the same belief that he could take what he wanted without consequences. But consequences had a way of catching up. She called Patricia. Elliot just lost his job. Perfect timing. Makes our case for primary custody even stronger. A father who's unemployed due to ethical violations isn't in the best position to argue for equal parenting time. That sounds cold. That's reality. Do you want to protect your children or protect his feelings? My children. Then let me do my job. Nadine agreed and turned her attention to Christmas preparations. Not for Elliot, he could figure out his own holiday plans. But for Briggs and Marlowe, who deserved some semblance of normalcy amid the chaos. They decorated the house together that weekend. Put up the tree, hung the lights, played Christmas music that Briggs complained about but secretly enjoyed. Marlowe made hot chocolate and burned the first batch, laughed at herself and tried again. Elliot called multiple times. Nadine didn't answer. On Christmas Eve, he showed up at the door with presents wrapped in paper that screamed last minute. Briggs answered, keeping his body in the doorway. What do you want? To see my kids on Christmas. Maybe you should have thought about that before you cheated on Mom. Briggs. I'll ask them if they want to see you. Wait here. He closed the door in his father's face and turned to Nadine. Do we have to? That's up to you and your sister. Marlowe appeared from the kitchen, wiping cookie dough off her hands. Is that Dad? Yeah. Tell him I'm busy. Briggs delivered the message. Through the front window, Nadine watched Elliot's face crumble. He stood on the porch another moment, set down the presents, and walked back to his car, a rental, she noticed, since the family vehicles were tied up in the asset freeze. He sat in the driver's seat for almost 5 minutes, hands on the steering wheel, staring at nothing. Nadine felt something that might have been pity if it hadn't been drowned out by cold satisfaction. This was what loss looked like. Not the dramatic kind. Not the kind with screaming and thrown plates and public confrontations. Just a man sitting alone in a rental car on Christmas Eve, realizing too late that he'd traded everything real for something that had never existed in the first place. He drove away eventually. The presents stayed on the porch until the next morning, when Briggs brought them inside and shoved them under the tree without opening them. Christmas Day was quiet. Just the three of them, unwrapping gifts, watching movies, eating leftovers from yesterday's dinner. Nadine's phone stayed silent. No calls from Elliot. No messages. She wondered if he was with Tessa, celebrating someone else's family tradition, pretending he belonged somewhere he'd only ever been a visitor. The week between Christmas and New Year's blurred together. Nadine worked from home, catching up on projects she'd neglected during the emotional turbulence of the past months. The kids were out of school, sleeping late, existing in the peaceful limbo of winter break. Patricia called on December 30th. The court date set for January 14th. Full hearing on asset division and custody arrangements. What do I need to prepare? Just yourself. You've been documenting everything. That's what matters. Show up. Tell the truth. Let the evidence speak for itself. Nadine hung up and stared at the calendar. 2 weeks until the hearing. 2 weeks until everything became permanent and legal and irreversible. She'd spent so long getting to this point that the approaching finality felt surreal. New Year's Eve arrived. Nadine sat on the couch with her children, watching the countdown on television, thinking about resolutions and fresh starts and the superstition that however you spend the first day of the year determines the rest of it. At midnight, Marlowe hugged her tight. Happy New Year, Mom. Happy New Year, baby. Briggs raised a soda in an ironic toast. To better decisions and fewer liars. They clinked glasses, soda for the kids, wine for Nadine, and watched the fireworks explode across the television screen in cities thousands of miles away where other people were celebrating endings and beginnings without knowing how much work both required. January arrived cold and sharp. The hearing date approached with the inevitability of weather. Nadine prepared by doing nothing unusual, just continuing the same patterns she'd maintained for months. Work, kids, home. The infrastructure of a life that would survive regardless of what the court decided. The night before the hearing, Elliot called. She almost didn't answer, but curiosity won. What do you want? To apologize. Now. After everything. I know it's too late. I know I can't fix this. But I need you to know I'm sorry. For all of it. Nadine sat on the edge of her bed, phone pressed to her ear, listening to her husband, soon-to-be ex-husband, finally say the words she'd needed months ago. It doesn't change anything, she said. I know. You destroyed our family for someone you barely knew. I know that too. Then why are you calling? Elliot was quiet for a long time. Because I wanted to hear your voice. Because tomorrow everything becomes official and I'm realizing what I've lost. You realized what you lost the day you started calling Tessa Rowley instead of coming home to your family. Nadine. Don't. Just don't. She closed her eyes, fighting exhaustion and anger and the faint ghost of grief for something that had died so long ago she'd almost forgotten what it felt like alive. Tomorrow, the court's going to divide up 17 years of our lives into assets and debts and custody schedules. And you're going to stand there and accept it because you earned every bit of it. I loved you. I still. No, you don't get to say that. Love isn't a feeling, Elliot. It's a choice you make every single day. And you stopped choosing us a long time ago. She hung up before he could respond, sat in the darkness of her room, in the house that would soon be legally hers alone, and let herself cry one last time for the marriage she'd tried to save until she realized it wasn't worth saving. The hearing itself was anticlimactic in the way legal proceedings often are. Forms and statements and evidence entered into record. Patricia presented the phone logs, the financial documents, the timeline of Elliot's lies with the precision of someone who'd done this 100 times before. Elliot's attorney, a young man who looked fresh out of law school, tried to argue mitigating circumstances, stress, miscommunication, the natural difficulties of long-term marriage. The judge, a woman in her 60s with steel gray hair and no patience for nonsense, listened without expression. When both sides finished, she reviewed her notes, then looked up. This court finds that the petitioner has demonstrated a pattern of financial deception and marital abandonment sufficient to grant legal separation with prejudice. Primary custody of minor children is awarded to Mrs. Porter. Mr. Porter is granted supervised visitation pending proof of stable employment and housing. Elliot's face went pale. His attorney whispered something urgent. The judge continued, unmoved. Marital assets will be divided 60-40 in favor of Mrs. Porter, reflecting her role as primary caregiver and her economic disadvantage resulting from Mr. Porter's deceptive financial practices. The family home remains with Mrs. Porter and the children. Mr. Porter has 30 days to remove personal possessions. The gavel came down. Just like that, 17 years ended with the sound of wood striking wood. Nadine walked out of the courthouse into January cold, feeling nothing except the bone-deep satisfaction of having done everything right. No screaming, no begging, no dramatic confrontations. Just patience, documentation, and the willingness to wait for justice to catch up. Patricia caught up with her on the courthouse steps. You okay? I will be. You did good. Stayed calm, stayed smart. Your kids are lucky to have you. Nadine nodded, not trusting her voice. Behind them, Elliot emerged from the courthouse alone. His attorney had already left, briefcase swinging as he rushed to his next appointment. Elliot stood on the steps, looking lost, looking for someone to blame. His eyes found Nadine's across the distance. She looked back, unflinching, until he turned away and walked toward the rental car he'd been driving since his own was tied up in asset division. That night, Nadine made dinner for her children in a kitchen that felt lighter, freer. They talked about school and upcoming plans, and everything except the hearing that had redefined their family structure. Later, After the dishes were done and homework was finished, Briggs found her in the living room. "So it's official," he said. "Yeah." "How do you feel?" Nadine considered the question. How did she feel? Not happy exactly, but not sad either. Something else. Something that felt like the first deep breath after holding it for too long. "Free," she said finally. "I feel free." Briggs hugged her, awkward and quick the way teenage boys hug their mothers, and retreated upstairs. Nadine sat in the silence of her home, her space, her future, thought about Elliot in whatever apartment he'd managed to rent, sleeping alone, realizing too late that temporary excitement could never compete with permanent belonging. Thought about Tessa Rowley, whose own divorce proceedings were apparently even uglier than Nadine's, according to the courthouse gossip Patricia had shared. Grant was taking everything, custody, assets, even the house Tessa's parents had helped them buy. The affair that had seemed so compelling, so worth destroying two families for, had left Tessa with nothing except the reputation of a homewrecker in a town that never forgot. Karma wasn't always loud. Sometimes it was just the steady accumulation of consequences, building like snowfall until the weight became unbearable. Nadine turned off the lights and went upstairs, passing the bedrooms where her children slept peacefully for the first time in months. Lay down in her bed, not the guest room anymore, but the master bedroom she'd reclaimed after Elliot moved out, and stared at the ceiling. Tomorrow she'd wake up and continue building the life she'd started protecting the day Grant Rowley handed her that envelope. Would focus on her job, her children, her future. Would stop looking backward at what had been lost and start looking forward at what could be gained. But tonight, in the quiet darkness, she allowed herself a moment of cold satisfaction. She'd played the long game, had been patient when patience felt impossible, had stayed smart when emotion wanted to take over. And in the end, she'd walked away with everything that mattered: her dignity, her children, her home, her future. Elliot got what he deserved, nothing. Tessa got what she deserved, less than nothing. And Nadine got what she'd fought for: survival, security, and the satisfaction of knowing she'd never once compromised her integrity to get it. The universe had a way of balancing the scales if you were patient enough to let it work. Nadine closed her eyes and slept without nightmares for the first time in 8 months.